We are going to do a program today about finding clinical trials. I know some people are like, I join everything. Others are like, well, I don't want to be a guinea pig. But the thing is that there's a lot of clinical trials out there where you don't necessarily have to do much for them. You might just be doing surveys. You might be just answering questions. So April's here today to tell us a little bit about that, how to use the website and everything. April Langhammer is the Senior Clinical Research Coordinator at the University of Kansas Medical Center, Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Center. She started as a medical secretary for the Movement Disorder Program, and since 2005, she has been working as a clinical research coordinator. She graduated from Truman State University with a bachelor's degree in biology and is a certified clinical research professional. April, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And then this is being recorded. I encourage everyone to open up their chats in case they want to ask any questions. Definitely be interactive. Hey, Karen, I see a few people I know, which always makes me happy. And so again, open up your chat. If you need closed captioning, if you click on the three dots on the bottom that say more, you can open up your closed captioning. And now I'm going to turn it over to April to get us started.
All right, so hi, thanks for joining me. Today we'll be discussing using ClinicalTrials.gov to find the right trial for you. I'm going to start off with a short presentation, then we'll do some practice examples based on where some of you are located and what types of trials you're interested in. Then we'll do some questions and answers. So today we'll discuss how to find trials you may be eligible for by navigating the ClinicalTrials.gov website, tips for finding trials, and what to do once you find a trial you are interested in participating in. So what is ClinicalTrials.gov? It's a website that is sponsored and maintained by the National Institutes of Health. It is a collection of information on studies in different phases, such as currently recruiting, active, or completed. The studies listed include not just those seeking volunteers with specific conditions, but also those looking for healthy volunteers. So not all trials are required to be listed on clinicaltrials.gov, but a majority of trials are. And even if it's not required, many investigators do still choose to post their studies to the website. An example of a trial that may not be listed is an investigator-initiated study, and those types of trials generally don't receive any kind of funding. So next, we'll discuss how to navigate the website. So this is what the main page of the website looks like. You have search options for condition or disease, other terms, intervention treatment, and location. Additionally, you can search by either all studies or recruiting and not yet recruiting studies. And not yet recruiting just means that they're still in the startup process. Again, the more information you include in the initial search, the fewer results you will receive on the next page. So we'll do an example. So when you start typing in a box, it will start to auto-populate. So the more you type, the fewer options there are. The same thing will occur with the other terms. So I've entered Parkinson's disease as the condition disease for this example, and we're going to focus on early stage Parkinson's disease studies. I'm going to leave the intervention treatment blank since there isn't a specific study we're looking for. And for location, I'm from Kansas City, so we're just going to use that as the example. And since we're looking for recruiting studies, we're going to click recruiting and not yet recruiting studies instead of all studies. And just note that you don't have to fill out every section. You could just type Parkinson's disease to get the maximum number of results. So this search gave us two results. This early Parkinson's disease monotherapy with CVN 424, and the study down here, which is called the LUMA study. So if we had just clicked all studies, it would have given us 28 results. And now that we've narrowed it down to these two options, we can evaluate these, which we'll go over in a few minutes. If we had a lot of studies show up, we could narrow down the search results even further by looking at the Focus Your Search section on the left. So both of these studies are currently recruiting, but if we were looking for a study that hasn't yet started, we could unclick the recruiting so that just the not yet recruiting shows up, and then click Apply Filter. So continuing to look at the Focus Your Search section, there are a lot of ways you can refine the search. Unfortunately, under this section, the options shown do include all studies, not just the recruiting or not yet recruiting that we originally filtered for. So the age section is one place you may want to refine your search, especially if you're over the age of 65. Most studies have an age limit, with the upper age limit that is much more restrictive than a lower age limit. So for many studies, especially treatment studies, the age limit is generally between 75 and 80. So if you have a lot of results in your initial search and you're kind of between those ages, it may save time to enter the information here. So you can do a quick search by choosing just one of the age range options, which for most is going to be adult or older adult. But you can also do a manual enter your search range, which is what we'll do here. So it does make you put the from and the to on your age. So for this section, we're just going to pick someone who's 81. So I don't show it here, but so other options for refining your search include study phase and study type. So for study phase, phase 1 studies are generally done with healthy individuals, and the main goal is to determine dosing for future studies and side effects. On a lot of those studies, they like to push the dosage of the medication as high as they can to kind of get as many side effects as possible to come out. Those are, again, generally done with healthy individuals. Phase 2 studies are commonly the first trials done in individuals with a specific condition. And again, they're primarily done for safety purposes, but also to start to determine if the treatment is effective in that population. Phase 3 studies are much larger, and they're to determine in a larger population if the treatment works and to obtain longer-term safety data. And phase 4 studies are for medications that have already been FDA approved. And then for the study type, interventional will be a medication or a device, and observational studies don't include any type of treatment. They're like observational patient registries, other types of things. And expanded access generally doesn't apply to Parkinson's disease. It's only in very special situations. And then if you have a spouse or some other person you know without Parkinson's that would like to volunteer in a study, there is an option for accepting healthy volunteers. So another way to expand or narrow down your options is by choosing a specific search term in the disease condition box. In the example on the top, you can see all of the different conditions that show up for this study, which is called the TOPAZ study. And it's trying to determine if this medication, zoledronic acid, reduces fractures in Parkinson's disease and other similar conditions. So since this study is not just enrolling people with Parkinson's disease, it does have other conditions listed, such as the dementia with Lewy bodies, multiple system atrophy, progressive supranuclear palsy. So entering any of those conditions would bring up this trial. And then below are, some search terms that you can try and use to narrow down your search. So if you were looking for a study that is treating a specific symptom of Parkinson's, I would suggest putting Parkinson's disease as the primary search term and then the symptom in the other terms box. So for example, if I just type in recruiting or not yet recruiting studies for dyskinesia, it'll return 429 studies. And most of them are other types of dyskinesia not related to Parkinson's. But if I put in both Parkinson's disease and dyskinesia, that number reduces down to 116 studies. Another thing to note is that this does return a listing of studies worldwide. So if you're in the US for location, you would want to put United States in that section unless you really like to travel out of the country and you want to do a study somewhere else. I would suggest entering that there. So the location section is kind of frustrating. It's not very user-friendly. Generally anymore when we're looking for a location, we can just put in our zip code and put in a radius, and then your results will pop up. Unfortunately, this website does not work that way. You can choose only one location at a time. If you live like close to the state line, for example, like I am here, you can't just search the general area. You have to search each location separately. So this is a downside, especially for rural areas or places where you are unfamiliar with like smaller towns. So one exception that I did find while preparing for this talk is that in some areas, there is a way to pick a radius. So we'll use Kansas City for our example again. So if I select just Kansas City, Kansas, it shows you a location selected. However, messing around with the location, I was able to choose a Kansas City metropolitan area. And once I did that, it allowed me to select a radius from anywhere from 1 to 500 miles. So if you live in a larger area, it may take some patience to try and find how exactly it's listed. So we'll go through kind of some examples to show you why it could be a little bit difficult. But once you find the area of how it's listed, you'll know what to put in the future. So next we'll look at the different sections of a study listing. So this is what you'll see when you first click on a link. On the left side are shortcuts for the specific sections. And on the right-hand side is basic information about the study, including the study type and study phase. The brief summary includes a short description with the basic information about the study, such as the length and some information about the medication. The official title down at the bottom of the screen is used in study documents such as the protocol and the consent form. So also included in the study overview section are intervention treatment, which gives the name of the study drug and tells you if there is a placebo. Other study ID numbers, this includes the protocol number and sometimes some other various numbers. The protocol number is what you'll want to have when you contact a site so that they know what study you're interested in. Yeah, so just so that they know what study you're interested in, having that protocol number handy will speed things up a little bit. So the intervention treatment, this is telling you that there's the study medication and placebo. And this one has a combination of numbers and letters for the study drug. That is very common. It's just kind of part of the drug development process. And it's just not far enough into the process to have an official name yet. But that generally comes a little bit later when they're a lot closer to going for FDA approval. Then they'll generally change that name. So the next section is contacts and locations. So the information provided in this section can be a little bit different for each study. So this one provides a contact directly at the site or at the sponsor if you have questions. So below that lists the locations where the study is taking place. So for this study, they list the institution where the study is taking place, a contact phone number, and the name of the principal investigator. Sometimes study coordinators are listed as the site contact instead of the principal investigator. And these are listed in alphabetical order by state. So to the right of that, you'll see a map with locations. So the red pins, if you click on those, it'll change the location on the left side to where that pin is. And on the blue circles, if you click on that, that means there's multiple sites in that kind of general area. And if you click on that, it'll zoom in and show you more detailed locations on those sites. They'll turn into the red pins once you zoom in. Unfortunately, there are times when the study listing, the locations doesn't give you any information other than maybe a city and a state. So sometimes it does take a little bit of extra work to find out where the location, where the study is actually taking place. So the eligibility criteria can be kind of an overwhelming section. Most of the time, not all criteria is listed, like in this example. And many times just the basic criteria is listed. It's common for there to be things listed that you don't know. For example, in this listing, it has an MDS UPDRS parts 2 and 3 combined score less than or equal to 48 screening. There's no way that anyone is going to know what their score on that assessment is. Additionally, each person who administers the scale scores it a little bit differently. So it may be less than 40 with one doctor and greater than 40 with another. And for studies, the only score that counts is the one that's done by the study rater. They've been identified by the study as being approved to administer that scale. So there will be information here that you do know, like your age, how long you've been diagnosed, and a lot of times they will list some medical conditions that are exclusionary. So the study plan section can be expanded for more information and is where you get into a lot of the details about the study. So the design details includes the purpose, such as interventional or observational, the allocation, meaning if it is randomized or open label, masking, which has to do with the blinding. So in this case, it shows quadruple masking. That means the participant, the caregiver, the investigator, and the study rater are all blinded. So none of them know whether a participant is receiving the intervention or placebo. And then arms and interventions includes more information about the intervention. So in this example, you can see that it's showing that it's BIIB 122, 225 milligrams versus placebo taken once a day. And the study will be between 48 and 144 weeks. So it varies on this one because the last person in will complete 48 weeks. Anyone enrolled before that will receive it up to 144 weeks. So if you haven't reached 144 weeks, everyone will stop at the same time. So what is the study measuring? Includes information about the primary and secondary outcomes, which is what is the study hoping to show. So in this example, the study is using the time to worsening of the MDS UPDRS, and the score has to be higher than the baseline, which is the first day where you receive the study medication, at 2 consecutive visits. So the hope is that the data analysis will show that those receiving the study medication took a longer time to satisfy that worsening criteria compared to those receiving the placebo. And then below that are secondary outcome measures. I didn't include any of those here, but there can only be one primary outcome measure, but there is no limit to the number of secondary outcome measures. So that section can be a little lengthy sometimes. And then the final sections include collaborators and investigators, publications, and study record dates. So the sponsor is again listed, and collaborators can include other companies that are helping with the study. Investigators in this sense refers to who is ultimately responsible for the study at the sponsor. So it's the medical director in this case. And then publications are not applicable until much later in the process. And sometimes they're not ever updated. And then study record dates, that doesn't provide much useful information unless you're just wanting to see how long the study's been active. So now that we've looked at all the sections of the search and the listing, we'll discuss some tips. So the biggest tip I have is that oftentimes the listings are not up to date, especially when it comes to the recruitment status. Since a lot of studies take place in many locations, it can be difficult for the sponsor or whoever is responsible for the posting to keep up with which sites are recruiting and which aren't. So if you are interested in a study, it doesn't hurt to contact the site to see if they are enrolling, especially if it's listed as not yet recruiting, as they may have already started. And then similar to the out-of-date study listings, excuse me, another thing I found is that a site may be participating in a study, but for one reason or another, they're not listed. Sorry. Again, it doesn't hurt to contact the site to see if they are participating. And even if they aren't, there may be something else that you're eligible for that you weren't aware of that study. And then on the website, when you're going through it, there's a little blue eye icons all over. And if you click on those, it just gives you a little bit of information about more like a definition or kind of a little glossary explaining the term. All right, so Study Basics is a link at the top of the web page that has a lot of good information about clinical trials. And we can look at that when we're doing the live example. Another tip is that it won't hurt anything to try entering different terms to expand or narrow down your search. You can also search for non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, like insomnia, constipation, memory problems, or urinary symptoms. Sometimes there are studies for those as well. Finally, if you do contact a site, find out the study is no longer enrolling, just be open to hearing about what else they have going on. Things are always starting and stopping, so you never know what they have coming up. So what else can you do with the website? So people are interested in finding out the results of studies that they participated in. Some sponsors do provide this information to participants after data analysis, but that's not always the case. However, after studies are completed, they are required to post results to ClinicalTrials.gov within a pre-specified period of time. So you can find the results using the following steps. So on that home page, if you scroll down, you can choose you'll see with results under more filters, and you can select with results. So then that'll take you to the study listing like we saw originally, where you click on the link. And then there's tabs at the top, but this time you want to select results posted. So once you click on that, you'll see kind of what we did before with the little shortcuts on the left side. And then as you scroll down, you'll see a variety of different information about the study. I've included just a little bit of basic information here. So this shows how many people were enrolled in the study, and the breakdown of how many people were in each dosing group, and how many of those completed the study and how many did not. There's also information about the primary and secondary outcomes, as well as adverse events. So adverse events occur during a study, but are not necessarily related to the study medication. So in this case, the adverse events are separated into mortality, listing the numbers of anyone who died during the course of the study, which this study I didn't include, but was 0, as well as serious adverse events and non-serious adverse events. So the serious and non-serious adverse events are broken down into categories such as cardiac disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, and respiratory disorders. So I've included some more information about the non-serious respiratory adverse events. So this shows that during the study, the most common adverse events were cough, throat irritation, and discolored sputum. So in looking at the numbers, you can see that those in the placebo group, the right column, had a much lower rate of these events compared to the low dose and the high dose. And even between the low dose and the high dose, the discolored sputum only showed up in the high dose of this drug and not the low dose. So now we'll shift our focus a little bit to what to do once you've found a study you'd like to participate in. So the most important thing is to have information about your Parkinson's disease diagnosis. When you contact a site, you'll most likely talk to the research coordinator, or at some sites, it'll be a recruitment coordinator. In addition to basic information, they'll ask you for details about your Parkinson's. They'll want to know when your symptoms started, when were you diagnosed, what Parkinson's medications are you currently taking, and what medications for Parkinson's have you previously tried but are no longer taking. You may be also asked about which of your symptoms are the most bothersome, or they'll ask you to list all the different symptoms you are experiencing. And while you call about a specific study, there is a chance that the site knows of a study that may be a better fit for you based on the symptoms that you're experiencing. So there is additional information they will ask for as well. It's important before starting a study that study coordinators and doctors are aware of any medical conditions and previous surgeries, as well as the dates they occurred. You'll also be asked for a list of all medications, vitamins, and supplements that you're taking. So having this list is important because we have to check and see if any of those interact with the study medication. Additionally, unless you're a patient of the doctor already, you will most likely be asked for medical records from your neurologist or primary care doctor. That can be a little bit easier these days with the EMR. Sometimes we have access to other physicians' records, but we may ask you to request those if we don't. So this is just to ensure that we're aware of all your medical history and to help us confirm some of the eligibility criteria. So the study personnel will also talk to you about the study and what all is involved as far as the time commitments, the kind of assessments that will occur, as well as other information such as details about the study drug and chances of receiving a placebo. So once all this information has been gathered, an appointment will be scheduled. Depending on how the site operates, you may receive the informed consent form to review ahead of time prior to your first study visit. At other sites, you'll read this while you're on site and then do the visit after that. And then still at other sites, they'll bring you in to read that while on site and then send you home and bring you back on another day to do your first visit. So prior to starting a study, it's important for you to understand everything that's involved, especially the risks. And many people do like to discuss the study with their family or primary care physician, the other neurologist before agreeing to participate. And really just take as much time as you need to make a decision. There's no rush. So just a few final thoughts before we do some live searches. While we wish that everyone who is interested could participate in the study, There are times that it's just not safe or in your best interest to participate. And even if you do end up not qualifying, we do appreciate your interest. There may be something else that comes up in the future. It's also important to remember that research is not necessarily a treatment and that many trials fail, but without people like you participating, we will never make any progress. So thank you. So let me switch out. And we will go to, let's see.
At this point, we're going to get a little interactive if people either want to come off mute or put answers in the chat, because I know April had talked about maybe asking, for example, where people would like her to search,
Yeah.
whether it's, Tampa, Florida, if there's a particular topic or a location, let us know. One thing I wondered is, can you almost specify, I think about, for example, the PPMI study, which was
Yes.
very big, but somebody might be like, I'm not doing a spinal,
Mhm.
can I specify that it's like, that is not the kind of study I would want to do versus I'm open to that?
Yes, unfortunately, I have not found a way to filter out for um, specific assessments and whether um, it does require like a spinal tap or a skin biopsy.
Mhm.
Um, some of that information may be included in the study listing, but there's no way to kind of filter out for the studies that don't require those.
Mhm. Oh, can you specify a certain research or a non-pharma trial? Like if you're local, well, I don't want to say local doctor per se, but if you were interested perhaps in, like, I mean, I know Karen's in New Jersey, but near me, University of Florida. If you're like, I know Gainesville does a lot of research. Um, I'd like to look at like what Dr. Oken is doing. Can you do something like that?
Yeah, so you can see here as I start to type, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see as I start to type that, um, well, it was, I typed wrong. Well, originally other items had started to come up.
Mhm.
Of course, it's not working. Let's try that again. Nope, not gonna work. So we could search down here by like
Gainesville, Florida, for
Gainesville.
example. Okay.
There we go. So we could do like Gainesville, Florida. Um, so when you go into search, I guess it's just
So you
thinking.
couldn't, for example, specify like Dr. Oken. It would have to be like his center, for example.
Yes. So see if it lets you. Yeah. So you can search by facility name.
Mhm.
Um, so he's at the
University of Florida.
University of Florida.
Yep.
Not sure why my internet doesn't want to participate. Doesn't want to work today. Let me try it on this one. So we'll just try Parkinson's disease, come down to more filters.
Mhm. There you go. Oh, they actually give you different
Yeah,
choices.
so there's a lot of different options that'll pop up.
Mhm.
Okay. So um, if we focus our search looking for recruiting studies, that narrows that down.
Mhm.
Um, and then, like you said, some people don't want to do drug studies.
Mhm.
Um, so we can just, click observational, um, and that'll narrow that down even further, maybe.
Okay.
So, like this one, it says an essential tremor, but Parkinson's disease shows up as well. So we would like go in um, and go down to participation requirement or criteria. Um, so even though essential tremor is in the name of the study, they are looking for people with Parkinson's as well.
So it's almost like we shouldn't be necessarily put off by the title. We should dig a little
Right.
deeper and see. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that seems like a therapeutic study. So, like no drug trial, just maybe
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah. So all these here should be no drugs involved.
Hmm.
So even this one shows non-interventional study. Um, so this one, it does have a diary. Um, and actually, if this is, so this is kind of an example of it not being kind of up to date. Um, so I know that this study is actually closed for enrollment. I know they just, I believe, finished up enrollment last week. So this is still showing recruiting, even though I know that it's not.
Okay.
So it does take a little bit of time. Um,
And
is
what would
there
typically
any,
happen then? Somebody would call like you and say, I'm interested in this study. And then
yes.
you would just say, well, that's closed, but I can maybe
Yeah,
look at
unfortunately,
others.
it's not, we're not recruiting for that anymore, but let's see what else we have
Okay.
that you might qualify for.
Mhm.
Generally, any study coordinator you talk to is at least going to be familiar with everything that they have going on at the site.
Mhm.
And even if they're not the primary coordinator, they can direct you to the right person.
Mhm.
Um, so we talked about some of that study basics section earlier.
Mhm.
Um, so this kind of goes over what we talked about today. Um, but it also has information, just general information about clinical trials. Why are they being done? Who's eligible to participate. So it is good information, especially if you're not too familiar with the process and everything. Um, yeah, this is helpful to read. Is there any suggestions anyone wants to search for?
Um, what about a study for a particular symptom of Parkinson's disease,
Yes.
like swallowing or blood pressure?
So we could do Parkinson's disease and um,
Okay, so that's how you would narrow the search.
blood pressure. So like this one doesn't show where it's even being done. Same with this one. A lot of these, like I think these are going to be probably just done at one location.
Hmm.
Um, and then even though we put in blood pressure, this is for depression.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes you may have to search for, so orthostatic hypotension is when you get dizzy or lightheaded when you stand up.
Hmm.
Um, so once we do that, it kind of gives us, it does require more medical terms sometimes. Like in this case, we got different options when we put in the orthostatic hypotension versus blood pressure.
Mhm.
So like I said, this is in Taiwan.
Oh,
So if we just search United States, oops, I can type.
and then Juliet also said sometimes when she's done Google with the trial number, she can get some information that way.
Yes, so especially the bigger studies, a lot of them have websites that will have more information than what's listed on ClinicalTrials.gov. Um, you can be a little bit limited because it's a set format in what all you can actually improve or include in there. Um, so with their own websites, they can put, as long as it's been approved by a committee um, that reviews all studies, then they can post their own website. All right, so we narrowed that search down to just United States, and that brought us down to just a few studies.
Mhm.
And then this one's the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, which would include the blood pressure.
Mhm. Are most study participants limited to a local area?
Um, it's more, what are you willing to travel?
Mhm.
Um, for us here, we generally about 3 to 4 hours is generally the distance, the longest distance people will travel to get to our site.
Mhm.
Um, but we have had further locations, especially if it's, um, you know, a study that someone's really interested in.
Mhm.
But it does make it a little bit more difficult sometimes, especially depending on the weather and, if you have to worry about getting an airline ticket or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's generally easier to find somewhere closer, just more convenient. Um, but there are some studies that will pay for transportation, hotels, that kind of thing. Um, so that does help.
Because I
Um,
would imagine that if you were to put in a location of, for example, Olympia, Washington versus Wakena, Washington, you're going to have much more in the capital versus a rural area.
yes. Um, but I think a lot of study coordinators are used to people traveling a few hours to get to a site, um, especially if you're in a more rural area compared to like New York City or,
Mhm.
you know, even some of the bigger cities in Florida, um, whereas more people just right around that area. But like here, we've had people, we're right on the border between Kansas and Missouri. So we get Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, sometimes Colorado, um, a few North Dakota, South Dakota every once in a while. So we do take from a large area.
Mhm. Is there any sort of search engine for a virtual or a remote trial? Like if it was more of a questionnaire
Um,
or something that you could say, well, I'm not, I'm maybe four
that
or
is a
5 hours
good
away.
question. I don't know the answer to that. Let's,
Again, and it's not even that I necessarily know that a remote trial exists. I just thought so
I
much is now
wonder.
virtual that I just thought perhaps like it remote or something.
So this is kind of one of the bad things that one of the problems with their search. So I'm looking for remote and it's bringing up all of these
Remote
random,
Oregon.
random things that are not applicable at all.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, 'cause like I know, PPMI has, try just type in. So now this is bringing up virtual reality.
Mhm.
It's kind of interesting. But I know like the PPMI study has a remote or online version as well. Um, There's like the Topaz study back in the slides.
Mhm.
I know that's also a remote study. They'll come to your house and administer this medication. Um, so they are out there. I'm just not exactly sure how to find them.
Or what about something like, for example, the Speech Accessibility Project? Although, admittedly, we don't know if that's more of a project versus a trial, but like that's also remote. Like, could you specific like a term? Would that be speech, for example, or
Let's try speech.
now I'm just having fun.
So what'd you say it was called?
It's the Speech Accessibility Project.
Wonder
Where we
if,
also have somebody had suggested there's a remote trial using light therapy called Celeste.
hmm.
And so I don't know if like you could actually just put in Celeste, for example, and find something that
So
way.
that I know you can. So for that, if you went to, assuming that's how you're going to spell it. Do you know if that's the correct spelling? Let's see.
Celeste. Yeah, that's correct.
I'll put in.
Interesting.
This might be phototherapy in Parkinson's disease. Yep, virtual clinic visits.
Yep, that's it.
So, yep, there we go. So Celeste specialized phototherapy device.
Then
So that did work.
we also have a question. This person has been confused by some of the participation in the PPMI study. Do you know if there's someone she could reach out to with questions? Is there like a main coordinator other than her site coordinator?
Um,
Or how would she find that out?
if you can like separately pass on her information,
Okay.
I don't work on that study, but I know people that do.
Mhm.
Um, and I can pass that information on and see if someone can contact her.
Okay.
If you just want to email me that separately.
Okay. Let me get that.
I
Any
know
other
there's a lot
questions?
involved in that study.
Yes, I'm getting that email. What other questions do folks have? This can be frustrating though. I can see how,
Yes,
yeah.
it takes some practice and takes some work to
Mhm.
try and find what you're looking for sometimes.
Okay, perfect.
But that would be nice if there was some sort of um, option where you could search remote.
Mhm. Would you recommend though folks call, I mean, I assume you would rather people look this up versus calling your center and saying, "Hey, what do you have to
I
offer?"
mean, and honestly, we have people do that all the time that call us. And we don't mind.
Mhm.
If you're interested in participating in research, we'll help however we can.
Mhm. Is there an alert you can set if there's going to be something near you that's going to be coming up soon, or kind of like letting the trial finder, clinical trials, kind of let you know?
I think there may be, um, I know there's like Google alerts. I'm
Mhm.
not computer savvy enough to know how that works.
Mhm.
But I know you can somehow set that up to search for like specific words, like once a day or however it's set up. Um, I don't believe you can do that in here. You can save studies
Mhm.
that you want to come back to.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure.
When would you save a study? Is that when it's not yet recruiting?
Yeah, or it's something you want to think about. Um, maybe if you just want to think about participating and then come back to it in a week so that you don't have to go through your search all over again. Um, then you can kind of save it. Um, so this would show my saved studies up here. You can also download
Okay.
a listing of the study, and it should have kind of all this information included as well.
Okay. That was going to be my question, is how do you actually save the study?
Um,
Right there. Okay.
I think this is, yep.
Yep.
So now the study is added to my saved studies.
Mhm. Wonderful. Any other advice you'd give? You gave us some good tips. Anything else you'd say, well, actually, this is good food for thought or something?
Yeah. I mean, just be willing to hear what else they have open, even if you have your heart set on participating in a specific trial. It doesn't always work out,
Mhm.
um, for reasons beyond um, both of our control. Maybe it's an abnormal lab result or something. We may have something else that you could qualify for. A lot of times we'll save people's names and phone numbers, and if something else comes up in the future, we'll give you a call or reach out to you.
Mhm.
Um, if you are um, somewhat close to a center, reach out to them. Like we have a monthly newsletter that goes out
Mhm.
with studies that we're currently recruiting for. So locations close to you may have that. You don't have to be a patient of ours. Anyone can sign up um, to receive that. Um, so check and see if they have something like that. They have a mailing list you can get on. Um, and they may notify you of studies coming out that way as well.
Wonderful. Well, we are almost out of time, but we did put a lot of good information in the chat. So I encourage you to save your chat. If your chat is open, you should see three dots at the top. If you click on it, it says more, and that is how you save the chat, because there's the ClinicalTrials.gov website in there. Denise Coley was kind enough to put some information. Kelly also listed about the PPMI study. So
Oh,
yes,
is that Bernard and Denise?
yep.
Yeah, just some mutual friends.
And so wonderful. As always, at PMD Alliance, we have a tradition, our wave of gratitude. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, April. And thanks everybody for giving us your time today as well to learn. Have
Yeah,
a
thanks for having me.
course. Thanks for being here. Have a great afternoon, everyone.